Right now, somewhere, a modern person is panicking because the bathroom roll is empty. 40,000 years ago, that was not a small inconvenience. That was Tuesday. No paper. No bathroom. No tiny roll sitting politely on a wall. So what did ancient humans actually use when nature demanded an answer? And this was not just a gross little detail. Hygiene could mean comfort, sickness, social rules, and basic survival. Today, we are going to decode the entire ancient bathroom problem, step by step. A leaf that helped. A leaf that punished. A sponge on a stick that made Roman bathrooms famous for all the wrong reasons. Smooth stones that were not as silly as they sound. Water systems that may have been cleaner than modern paper. And one uncomfortable truth about why toilet paper is almost brand new. Every solution came from geography, culture, and trial by terrible error. Stay with me to the end, because the final answer may make your bathroom look less advanced than you think. But first, we need to remove the weirdest assumption modern people carry. Let's get one thing straight first. Toilet paper is brand new. Embarrassingly new. Mass-produced rolls only showed up in the 1800s. For 99% of human history, there was no paper for anything, let alone that. So the textbooks get this backwards. We treat ancient hygiene as a gross afterthought. It wasn't. It was engineering. The first rule was simple: use what's around you. Geography decided your wipe. Live near a river. Water did the job and did it well. Live in a desert? You learn to love a smooth, sun-warmed stone. Live in a forest? Leaves, moss, and bark were your aisle 7. The smart move was knowing which leaf, because some leaves bite back. Imagine reaching for the wrong plant. Picture the modern equivalent, grabbing sandpaper off the shelf. Ancient people built a mental database of safe versus dangerous foliage. That knowledge was survival, passed down like a family recipe. Mullein was a favorite across many cultures. Its leaves are big, soft, and covered in tiny, fuzzy hairs. People literally nicknamed it cowboy toilet paper much later. Velvet from a plant. Free, renewable, and growing on the hillside. Now let's talk about the people who got really organized. The Romans turned this into a whole system. And the Romans are where our story gets famous and a little gross. Enter the tersorium. It was a sea sponge tied to the end of a wooden stick. Picture a sponge on a long handle. You'd use it, then rinse it in a channel of running water or a bucket of vinegar. Here's the controversial part. In a public latrine, that sponge was often shared. Shared. Picture a long stone bench with holes cut in a row. No stalls. No privacy. You sat shoulder to shoulder with strangers and made conversation. The Roman toilet was a social hub. People discussed business, politics, and gossip while doing their business. Compare that to now. We hide in a locked room and pretend we're invisible. The Romans treated it like a coffee shop. There's even graffiti from these latrines joking about the experience. One inscription wishes you good health while you sit. They had a sense of humor about it. But that shared sponge had a downside. Without soap as we know it, it could spread parasites and disease. The convenience came with a real cost. Some scholars think Roman plumbing actually helped intestinal worms travel. So the empire's famous engineering had a blind spot. Clean water in, shared sponge across. Move east and you find a totally different philosophy. In ancient China, paper was invented around the 2nd century BC. But using it for the bathroom came later. By the 6th century AD, a scholar named Yan Jitu wrote something telling. He said he wouldn't use paper with important writing on it for the toilet. Which means people were using other paper for exactly that. Respect the words, not the blank sheet. By the Ming Dynasty, China was producing toilet paper at a scale that's staggering. Records describe enormous quantities made for the imperial court. Some sheets for the emperor were soft, perfumed, and huge. While China had paper, much of the world used something harder. Literally harder. In Japan and across Asia, people used a thin, flat stick called a chugi, a wooden or bamboo spatula, basically. You scraped rather than wiped. Archaeologists have dug up these sticks at old sites, sometimes with traces still on them. Yes, scientists studied ancient poop sticks and learned about the parasites and diet of the people who used them. A dirty stick became a time capsule. That's the part I love about this. The grossest objects often tell us the most. So where does ancient glue fit into a toilet paper video? Stay with me because it proves a bigger point. That Neanderthal birch tar wasn't an accident. To make it, you have to heat birch bark without burning it. You need to keep the bark in a low oxygen environment at the right temperature. Get it too hot and the bark turns to useless ash. Get it too cold and nothing happens. There's a narrow window and they found it. One method involves rolling bark tight and burying it beside a controlled fire. Another uses a sealed container to trap the vapors. Either way, this is deliberate multi-step chemistry. By a brain we kept calling dumb. The point is this. Ancient people were not fumbling idiots. They observed, tested, and remembered. The same mind that engineered glue chose its hygiene tools with care. Picking the right wipe was just another applied science. Soft over scratchy. Safe leaf over toxic leaf. Running water over still water. These were informed choices, not random grabs. Let's go region by region because the variety is the whole story. In snowy lands, people use snow. Cold, but startlingly effective and clean. A handful of fresh snow leaves nothing behind. Compare that to your bathroom in winter. We pay for heated seats and they had the entire tundra. Near coasts, people used seashell. Yes, shells. The smooth, curved kind used like a scraper. Quick one before we go deeper, subscribe and tell me which ancient problem I should decode next. The ancient Greeks had a practice called pesoi. They used small ceramic pieces, sometimes broken pottery, for cleaning. And here's a dark joke baked into the archaeology. Some of these pottery shards had names scratched on them. They were ostraca, the same pieces used to vote people into exile. So you could vote to banish your enemy, and then use his name to wipe. Petty revenge, ancient style. Scholars actually found shards worn smooth from this use. The evidence is real, not a legend. But ceramic is rough. Long-term use could cause irritation and worse. Comfort and health were always in tension. In arid regions in the Middle East, water stayed king. Many cultures simply used the left hand and water. That's why in many traditions, the left hand became taboo for eating. A hygiene rule hardened into etiquette. This is the ancestor of the modern bidet. Half the world still considers water the obvious choice. And asimically, they have a point. We're the weird ones, smearing dry paper and calling it clean. That's not an insult. It's just a fact we don't like to hear. In the Americas, people used corn cobs once corn was domesticated. Dried cobs were surprisingly functional and reusable in a sense. Frontier Americans used them for centuries too. Grass, hay, and even handfuls of clay appear in the record. Wool worked in herding cultures. The Inuit reportedly used moss in summer and snow in winter. Season by season, the toolkit changed. Now think about what all this required. Knowledge. Constant, detailed, life-saving knowledge. Which moss is soft and which one tears. Which leaf soothes and which leaf inflames. Where the clean water runs versus where it sits. This wisdom wasn't written down for most of history. It lived in people, taught child to child. A grandmother showing a kid which plant to grab. That's a classroom with no walls. We outsourced all of it to a factory. We don't know a single safe wild plant near our homes. They knew dozens. Who's really the primitive one? Let's address the smell and the cleaning question directly. Ancient people were not living in filth by choice. Many cultures bathed often, far more than medieval Europe later did. Roman bathhouses were daily social rituals. Public baths in many cities were the center of life. The idea that the ancient world was uniformly dirty is a myth. Some periods were cleaner than the centuries that followed. Hygiene wasn't a straight line upward. It zigzagged, lost and found across the ages. Mines. The Romans had running water that medieval kings would have envied. Progress is not a guarantee. It's a thing you can drop and forget. Here's a payoff most people never hear. The flush toilet idea is ancient too. The Indus Valley civilization had advanced drainage over 4,000 years ago. Homes in cities like Mohenjo-Daro had toilets connected to covered sewers. Brick-lined channels carried waste away from the streets. 4,000 years ago. That's not a typo. While other places caught up much, much later. The Minoans on Crete had flushing systems in their palaces too. The best evidence suggests they used stored water to clear waste. So sophistication kept appearing and disappearing. A good idea isn't safe just because someone had it. Let's talk about what got lost. When Rome fell, a lot of plumbing knowledge faded in Europe. People went backward for centuries. The grand sewers crumbled and weren't rebuilt. Chamber pots and a window became the system. The phrase "look out below" was not a joke. Streets ran foul in many medieval cities. The clean Roman latrine became a distant memory. So when you flush today, remember, you're using a comfort that humanity invented, lost, and reinvented. Twice, at least. Maybe more. Back to the materials, because the chemistry deserves respect. That birch tar wasn't only glue. People chewed it, and we found their tooth marks preserved in lumps of it. We pulled ancient DNA from chewed tar in Scandinavia. A teenager's entire genome from a wad of prehistoric gum. We know what she ate and roughly how she looked. From spit on a piece of tar. That's the level of ingenuity and accident we're working with. These people left clues in everything they touched. Even their trash speaks. Especially their trash. So let's collapse the whole picture. There was never one ancient toilet paper. There were hundreds of clever local answers. Water where water flowed. Leaves where forests grew. Snow where snow fell. Shells, cobs, sponges, sticks, and stones. Each one chosen for a reason. Each one taught and remembered. And the surprising verdict. Many of those methods were perfectly hygienic. Some, like water, beat dry paper hands down. We didn't invent cleanliness. We just put it on a roll and forgot how it used to work. So picture that person again, 40,000 years ago, crouched by the creek, reaching for the soft mullein leaf they already knew was safe. No panic. No mystery. Just a quiet, practiced bit of knowledge. The same brain that boiled bark into glue. The same hands that would one day build sewers under cities. They weren't waiting for us to teach them. They were figuring out the world one ordinary morning at a time. And every single one of your ancestors solved this exact problem. Every day of their lives. Without a factory, a brand, or a single sheet of paper. You exist because they got the small things right. The leaf, the water, the warm stone in the sun. If this surprised you, subscribe and drop a comment with the next ancient question you want answered. Next time you reach for that roll, think of them. The crouch is ancient. The cleverness is ancient. And you, breathing, reading this in a heated room, are the proof it all worked.